Hey everyone, this is Paul Gale from paulgalenetwork.com, and thank you for joining me today for video game news. It is July 16th, 2021, and these are the top stories of the day. To kick things off, we have to go over something that was just revealed to us, in fact yesterday, by Valve. This is the Steam Deck, a brand new portable video game console coming to us this December. As you can see here, it looks comparable to the Nintendo Switch, and that's because it's going to be kind of competing with the Nintendo Switch, and for that matter, the Nintendo Switch OLED model, the Nintendo Switch Lite. And let me tell you what it is. It is a 7-inch diagonal screen portable device. As you can see, it's got D-pad, 2 analog sticks, 4 face buttons, X, Y, A, B. It has the 4 shoulder buttons and 4 back triggers. You've got a 7-inch screen. You've got 2 track pads that are comparable to a mouse on a keyboard, and it will play every game available on Steam. It will sync up with your Steam library. If you have Steam and have been using it for years on PC, you'll be able to play those games on the go. It's going to give you a 2 to 8 hour battery life. The entry point is $400. There are different models that come with a little bit more, and I'll scroll down and go over that in just a moment. But this is going to be pretty interesting. It will be dockable on TV or on a computer monitor, so you will have that option as well. Steam will sell its own dock at a later point for a cost, but any USB Type-C connecting device that can bring this device to your screen will work, so that's cool. It won't come with it, but you'll have that capability if you don't want to go and wait for Steam's own dock. They do show it off though, and like I said, I'm going to scroll through it some more. But if this is your first time seeing this, I wanted to give you my overall impression and kind of tell you what it is and what to expect. I think it definitely has a place on the market, The $400 price point puts it at a pretty attractive entry if you're getting the base model, because it is only $50 more than a Nintendo Switch OLED. Having access to all of Steam's content means that you are getting a ton of PC games, lots of indies, lots of third-party support. You're even getting some PlayStation titles that Sony has put on PC, that Microsoft has put on PC, that are available in the Steam ecosystem. Of course, you're not going to get Nintendo's own first-party IP. This is not something that's going to play The Legend of Zelda, Skyward Sword, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild's sequel, Super Mario Odyssey, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So it's not that. But it doesn't have to be that to a lot of people. A lot of people, if they're happy with their Xbox Series X or their PlayStation 5 and kind of wish they could play majority of those games portably, this is an option. Then again, with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, and for that matter PS4 and Xbox One, you could play those games portably if you have something like an iPhone or an Android, something that is used as a screen, and it's not quite the perfect setup in streaming and accessing things over the cloud. You do have to have both devices to make it work, whereas nothing beats quite an all-in-one package, which is what Nintendo achieved with the Nintendo Switch, right? Being a screen, games, controllers, kickstand, portable, home console, all in one. But this is kind of going for that. You can't take off the controllers. You can use, however, other controllers with this, so that's good. But yeah, they're not like Joy-Cons where they slide off the rails. Having the ability to play on TV means that, for some people, depending on their living room setup and stuff, they might not have their PC close to their TV, but they would like to play PC games on the big screen. Here's this. Could this be an attractive alternative to buying an Xbox Series X or a PlayStation 5? For some people, yeah. If you don't care a ton about exclusives that are probably only ever going to come out on PS5 or probably only ever going to come out on Xbox Series X, then this will play quite a bit, as they show off here. It's got Control, it's got Doom Eternal, it's got Hades, it's got all of the games that have been on Steam for the last X amount of years, including new indie titles that come out. Let's scroll and look a little more, though. But like I said, this will be a preferred method for a lot of people of how to play a majority of third-party games portably, because even though you technically have that option with Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, you do have to have another iPhone or Android or some type of device. And even though most people do, that's still technically not a part of the system. So you have to have that, you have to stream it, you have to make it work in such a way. This is kind of more of Nintendo's territory of creating something all in one. So it's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting, honestly. $400 gets you the base model, 64 gigabytes of eMMC memory and a carrying case. For $530, 256 gigabytes of onboard storage. You can get micro SD XC cards and expand them, but what this extra $130 does is it boosts you up to NVMe SSD, so it's going to be faster. And if you go to the 512 gigabyte model, which doubles that 256, it goes for $650, which is another $120. So the price increase is comparable to this, but a little bit less technically of a jump, $10 less, and gives you better storage. It's faster, premium anti-glare etched glass, which is new, or I should say is not included in that middle tier model or the base model, an exclusive carrying case. So pretty cool stuff. The availability is December for when this thing comes out. It's going to be pretty powerful, significantly more powerful than the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch has 4 gigs of RAM. This has 16. The dock they show off. It's going to be very interesting to see how this thing competes. Steam is very familiar for people in the know of the video game industry. Chances are, if you're a hardcore gamer, if you're one of the few million people that are on YouTube, in video game forums, on social media, checking out games and stuff like that, you're very familiar with Steam. Even if you go into a little bit of the mass market territory, you may have a Steam connection. But it's not truly recognizable by the true mass market. The true mass market knows Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, and at a time also Sega. Those are the core video game companies. But this is big enough that I think it can make a solid dent. And I'm intrigued to see just who buys it, how satisfied are people, how well does it sell, does it get any exclusives along the way, which is a possibility, and inevitably, how is it going to compete hands-on, side by side, when it comes to the same games running on it versus on Nintendo Switch. Like you're taking a game like Hades, you're taking a game like Control, like Doom Eternal. How are people's portable experiences going to vary? This is a more powerful system. It's more modern, and you're going to have faster loading times. You're going to have more teraflops on it than the Nintendo Switch. This is, for a lot of people, probably what they were kind of hoping the Nintendo Switch Plus would be. If that system is even coming out, which I imagine that before Nintendo full-on goes Nintendo Switch 2, they'll probably have a Plus model. Not a bigger screen, but a more ramped up unit, with more power within. Is this within the realm of possibility, specs-wise, of what Nintendo could pull off with a Nintendo Switch Plus? Maybe. you see how they got it down to $400 and without quite providing you a dock to put it on the TV, whereas Nintendo's Switch truly is a $300 device, dock included. Older tech, older specs, but they got it for $300, and the OLED model $350. So is it reasonable to expect these specs right here, but with a dock included, on a Nintendo Switch Plus come, let's say, November 2022? I say yeah. I say it's definitely possible to expect something like that. Now, what about a Nintendo Switch 2? I would say definitely. I would say definitely a Nintendo Switch 2 will be able to achieve this power level, if not more, but that's also based off of when does it come out? You know, is it a couple of years down? The further we're removed from a Nintendo Switch 2, if that's what Nintendo does next, you know, the more powerful that's going to be. It really comes down to, will they do an interim mid-gen spec refresh edition? And if so, when? These are some unknowns, but it's intriguing. But for now, we've got another player on the market, and I'm pretty excited to check it out. Looking at it, it looks pretty nice. Some people aren't too sure about, you know, how am I going to play with these 4 buttons when it's so close? And honestly, I think your grip will just change. I don't think you're going to claw it like this, like some people are saying. I think, you know, you just slide your hand down a little bit, and then there you are, instead of hand up here. That doesn't sound very practical. So I think it'll be better than what some people are expecting. Some people seem to have no problem in their mind envisioning, how am I going to play this? And some I hear, like, they're really freaking out of, dude, this B button is floating off the edge. Am I going to have to claw it? I don't think so. Just slide your hand down slightly. You know, when you're dealing with an all-in-one device like this, or something almost all-in-one, you're very rarely going to find a controller that's absolutely flawless, unless if it's just giant at this point, you know, like a giant Nintendo GameCube controller with a keyboard in between. Well, imagine a screen in between. Well, then you're dealing with, you know, imperfection issues when it comes to portability, but okay, maybe there's an ideal controller, right? And then even some people would argue, the GameCube controller is not perfect. I happen to think the GameCube controller is very close to perfection when it comes to ergonomics, and I personally liked the 4-button face layout. But that's another topic for another day, talking about buttons and stuff. But anyways, I wanted to spend the first part of video game news with PGN today talking about this, but I think that's about it for now. Very solid. Let me know what you thought of it. The reason why I stayed on this today is because I also wanted to get into the Famitsu sales at the end and go over a top 30 for a change instead of a top 10. So I saved this topic for today. Okay, moving on. Matt Piscatella, thank you. Matt Piscatella, as you know, if you watch my content every month, he works over at the NPD group, and he supplies us with data coming in every month, usually a couple of weeks into the next month, talking about the previous month's worth of sales and stuff like that. So over on Twitter, he had the following to say: June 2021 US NPD thread. June 2021 consumer spending across video game hardware, content, and accessories grew 5% when compared to a year ago, totaling $4.9 billion. First half 2021 consumer spending reached $28.9 billion, a 15% increase when compared to the same period in 2020. Phenomenal. I love it. Even with shortages of PS5 and Xbox Series X, you know, those systems could be selling more than they are. There's enough of them out there that, along with a very powerful selling Nintendo Switch that is just in its best year yet, we're just taking the video game industry to new levels, and I love seeing it. I'm going to go over some of the stats that Matt broke down. You know, hardware jumped big, as I mentioned. Nintendo Switch was once again the best-selling platform of the month, but since Xbox Series brand of consoles, especially with the X, cost more than Nintendo Switch, the Xbox Series brand was actually the highest amount of dollar spending for the month of June. You know, you've got the $300 S and the $500 X, and overall you get this average of $400 being, you know, spent per console. That's more than Nintendo Switch's $200 for the Lite, $300 for the Switch, averaging out to being $250. if you look at it from a very basic perspective. That's not exactly quite how it works because we don't know the exact ratio of lights to switches, S's to X's, respectively, for Nintendo and Microsoft. But regardless, more money was spent on Xbox hardware than Nintendo, but Nintendo Switch was still the best-selling platform of the month, continuing its run for quite some months now, and I don't know when it's going to be beat. Nintendo Switch was also the best-selling hardware for the first whole half of 2021 in both dollar and unit sales. So Nintendo Switch sold more than any other platform and made more money despite costing less, because that much more are selling. PlayStation 5 remains the best-selling, well, I should say fastest-selling console from launch point to first 8 months on the market, excluding portables. So even though Nintendo Switch is outselling PlayStation 5, launch-aligned, PlayStation 5 is the fastest-selling console in U.S. history up to this point. Can it continue? Well, we'll see. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart was June's best-selling game. It was also the best-selling, best debuting Ratchet & Clank game, which doubled 2016's Ratchet & Clank entry, so that's pretty awesome. Mario Golf Super Rush was the third best-selling game of June, and it was the best-selling Mario Golf game for a debut month. The previous record holder was Mario Golf Toadstool Tour back on Nintendo GameCube in 2003, July. So quite a record to beat, an 18-year-old record. Crushed. Nintendo Switch is selling great, and any software coming out on it is doing very well. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. I announced this on Video Game News a little ways back because we actually had this little sneak peek ahead of time, but it went from being the 51st best-selling game in May to the 17th best-selling game in June in the overall chart, mainly because Nintendo Switch version launched in June and just did very well. Could look a little bit more at some of the other titles. You know, we got Scarlet Nexus that debuted. I could open this up. We got Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. That was that number 2 spot, if you were wondering. It went from 4 to 2. MLB The Show at number 4. Scarlet Nexus, like I said, number 5. Then we got Resident Evil Village, Mario Kart 8, Minecraft, Marvel Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and Mortal Kombat 11, finishing off the top 10. Whenever you see an asterisk next to the title, that means, digital not included. So Animal Crossing coming in at number 11, doesn't include digital sales. Same thing with number 13, Super Smash Bros. Number 15, Super Mario 3D World. And number 18 is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And number 19 is Pokemon Sword and Shield. I highlighted those games because those ones all have the asterisks next to them. Pretty awesome to see Breath of the Wild, gotta say. Still there, almost 4.5 years later, still entering at number 18 this month, which went up from last month's number 19 spot. It'll be interesting to see how Skyward Sword does when we get this equivalent worth of data in August, representing July. And speaking of Skyward Sword, that comes out today. Reviews are a little bit mixed. I think if this game debuted fresh for the first time on Nintendo Switch, it would be scoring higher. But since it's a remake of a Wii game, you have people playing it for a second time, third, fourth, fifth time, and it's based off of an older title, so the expectation of what a remake should be has definitely grown in the industry. We've seen things like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, and when so much effort went into those remakes, total graphic overhaul, and 2 games in 1, and for $40, and then you've got this game for $60, which, yes, it is in 60 frames per second instead of 30, it is in 1080p instead of 480p, and it's got some quality of life issues, controversial usage of the Loftwing amiibo and stuff like that, but overall, same visuals, no polygon animated bump up, texture lighting work done. Expectations are up here, and Nintendo delivered kind of a mixture of things. Some things they probably could have done more, and some things are like, that was pretty cool, pretty worth it. But Game's overall reviewing pretty well. It's sitting in the 80s on Metacritic if you want to use that metric, which takes everybody's reviews and kind of averages them out. I'm excited to get the game today. I thought Skyward Sword was good. I thought the first half of the game was good. The second half, great. In particular, the last third, excellent. So overall, I think it's a great game. Not my favorite Zelda, but story-wise, pre-Breath of the Wild, probably the best told story and really one of the best depictions of Zelda and Link and Zelda's relationship. And, this isn't really a spoiler, but it is the first game story-wise in the timeline of the Legend of Zelda series. So if you have not yet checked this out, this game is definitely for you. It is a great game, like I said, and very worthwhile playing, especially if you're on the newer side to the Legend of Zelda franchise. And if you have not checked it out, you're going to get a brand new adventure. Keep in mind that the graphics in some cases aren't going to be as good as Breath of the Wild. Will they be more sharp visually, more clear on the screen, and play more smoothly? Yes, because you're getting 1080p, you're getting 60 frames per second, which is higher than what Breath of the Wild was. But an overall sophistication of the world and stuff like that. This is a game that did come out in 2011. That is a 10-year-old title. Some of it, will start to, will show its age a little bit. But overall, I think Nintendo did enough to make it feel like mostly a modern game, a little bit older in the sense of how the game was designed and stuff like that, but with some modern conveniences and sophistication that it should feel fresh, it should feel cool, and hopefully you like it. I'm looking forward to how well it sells. It came out on the tail end of Wii's life cycle when a lot of people, despite there being, close to 100 million Wiis out there at that point, a lot of people were kind of over it. And when the game came out, it looked good, but it looked good in 2011 on Wii, which was already 5 years old at that point, in comparison to what was already shown off on Wii U and what it could achieve on Zelda and what Xbox Series, well, not Xbox Series, but Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 were advancing, despite also being older machines, already more powerful than Wii, and now at the tail end of their life, showing us really good-looking games. And Skyward Sword only ended up selling a few million copies. So it deserved more. It should have sold more based off of the ratio of who owned a Wii at the time. But now I think it's going to do better on Nintendo Switch, as almost every Nintendo Switch game does compared to any other entry point in its franchise. Pikmin, Animal Crossing, Zelda, 3D Mario, Mario Kart, Smash Brothers. They're on fire on Switch. Anyways, let me know what you thought of today's discussion so far. Skyward Sword, are you getting it? NPD results. Are you happy that the industry is doing well? Steam Deck, what do you think? Okay, and finally, the Famitsu sales charts, one of my favorite things to talk about. Usually on Thursdays I give this to you. Today is on Friday. This comes from ResetEra.com and Chris1964 for nicely putting this together. Thank you. This represents week 28's data, which occupies July 5th through July 11th of 2021. And number one, Monster Hunter Stories 2 had its debut of 137,676 copies sold. And number two, E-Baseball Professional Baseball Spirits 2021 Grand Slam from Konami on Nintendo Switch with a 106,597 debut. 3, Mario Golf. 4, Game Builder Garage. 5, Ring Fit Adventure. 6, Minecraft. 7, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. 8, Momotaro Dentetsu. 9, Miitopia. 10, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. You look at these games, they're all Nintendo. That's a Nintendo top 10. Number 3 through 10 isn't that impressive in overall amount of copies sold. Number 3 game was 17,000. Number 10 game was 7,400. So everything in between wasn't, giant, of course. But overall, a debut of 2 titles cracking 100,000 is solid. And the 3 through 10 spot, still pretty impressive, at least for Nintendo. You go into the top 30, 11 Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, 12 Animal Crossing New Horizons, 13 Monster Hunter Rise, 14 Samurai Warriors 5, 15 Super Mario Party, 16 Clubhouse Games 51, 17 Pokemon Sword and Shield, 18 a PlayStation 4 game, Samurai Warriors 5, that version. You might remember before, these games dropped head to head, and the Nintendo Switch version debuted a little bit lower than the PlayStation 4 version, but now, you know, the drop per week is a little bit smaller for Nintendo Switch, so will it eventually catch up and surpass the PlayStation 4 version? Possibly. Still below 55,000 on Switch versus 70,000 on PS4, but you know, depending on the lifespan and the legs of these two games respectively and how they're doing digitally, the Nintendo Switch version may come out on top, but it looks like both are, you know, pretty close to each other. Number 19, Splatoon 2. Number 20, another PS4 game, Scarlet Nexus. 21, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild with a 19% jump. Awesome. Love seeing that. Number 22, new Pokemon Snap. 23, The Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel, which is a new game that debuted. Number 24, Moshi Kashite. Number 25, Fitness Boxing 2. Number 26, another PS4 game, Furaiki 4. Not too familiar. Actually, not familiar at all with what that game is. Number 27, Dragon Quest 11S on Nintendo Switch. Number 28, I should say, Furakai 4 on Nintendo Switch. So it looks like a comparable drop between the two. 2,000 on PS4, 1,700 on Nintendo Switch. Will we see a similar where the PS4 version debuted a little bit higher, but the Nintendo Switch version is dropping a little less, and they end up getting balanced out? Time will tell. Then again, they're debuting so low that I don't expect to see them in the future pop up on a next chart, you know. Number 29, Super Mario Odyssey, and number 30, Super Mario Maker 2. That's a split of 27-3. I rarely go over the top 30, but there you have it. Nintendo Switch 27, PS4 at number 3. And when you go into the hardware side of things, the best-selling console of the week was Nintendo Switch with 69,283. PS5 came in at number 2 at 14,404. Xbox Series brand at 1,066. PS4 at 678. Nintendo 3DS at 628. Everything was down from the previous week. I expect Nintendo Switch to go up next week. Monster Hunter Rise, or I should say Monster Hunter Stories 2, didn't end up boosting Nintendo Switch hardware. It sold pretty well, but it didn't make the hardware go up. The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, provided that stock is out there, I would like to see Nintendo Switch hit 85,000 for the week. But if it doesn't, and if it continues to drop or stay in the 60s, the main reason is Nintendo Switch OLED model is now out there in the mindscape of the world. People know it's coming out October 8th. Some people will say, I don't need it. I don't need to spend an extra $50 or the equivalent in yen. Some people say, you know what? I'm going to wait. I could wait, you know, less than 3 months to get that model. That's when I'm going to hop into the Nintendo Switch ecosystem. So don't be too alarmed if Nintendo Switch isn't for several weeks breaking its previous records goal. I still think that at the end of it, 2021 Nintendo Switch in Japan and worldwide will pass 2020. All right, that's going to do it today for Video Game News with Gale Network. Thank you for watching. This has been fun talking. Hope you all have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.